Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Activist Lawyer. I'm Sarah Henry and I'm joined by Jack McClelland. Thanks,
Hello
Jack.
everyone.
So today we are delighted to have Hannah Campbell and Kristen Wallace from Stop Street Harassment NI. And this is our first guests of the series, so thank you both of you for joining us. We're a bit rusty, but hopefully today will go okay. Just we'll give our listeners a little bit of a background into Stop Street Harassment NI, which is a non-profit organisation founded by Hannah and Kristen in August 2020 after living in the Netherlands, where public street harassment is a criminal offence. The campaign aims to raise awareness on street harassment in Northern Ireland, educating people on its causes and effects, as well as lobbying local councils and politicians to take official action. 1 year on, or more now, the organisation continues to tackle the issue of street harassment in Northern Ireland and have recently expanded the team to ensure these issues are addressed and changes are made in our society. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to Activist Lawyer, Hannah and Kristen.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, thank you so much for having us today.
Not at all. I know you have a very busy schedule, and particularly at the moment, things are getting busy around the area that you're working in. But just before we get into the core of your work and what the organisation does, tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, how you met, how you started up Stop Street Harassment NI.
Yeah, well, myself and Kristen, we've actually known each other for most of our lives. We're both from Derry. We actually went to the same nursery school, the same primary school, the same secondary school, and then did the same degree, did law at Queen's together. But we weren't really friends until we kind of did the Queen's degree together, which is so funny now because we're so close. Yeah. But kind of at law at Queen's, that's really where things kind of began. We decided to do an Erasmus placement in Maastricht University in the Netherlands. And whilst we were there, we were studying kind of criminal law, and we were assigned an essay on criminalising street harassment. And at the start, we were a bit like, this is just something that's just so new to us. And when we had sat down and started to do the readings, we kind of were saying to each other, this stuff is so true. Like, we'd actually never really thought of it like this. And it was just something that was so new and so different to us and really, really made us think. So much so that when we came home from Erasmus, we were still kind of talking about it, and we were talking about street harassment with our family and friends and within them circles. And we were kind of just saying, like, have you thought about it this way? And it was just so many things we hadn't really thought of, especially kind of a lot of stuff. Like, we had always really accepted street harassment as something that was kind of normal, and we'd never really thought of it as being harassment. So really we wanted to we spoke about it, and we thought, why don't we start up an Instagram page, and why don't we put out this information and kind of see how we get on. And really that's where it began. So we started the Instagram campaign in September of 2020, and it really just grew from there.
Yeah, so obviously for our listeners, what you're speaking about, street harassment, and people here maybe aren't aware of what it really is. So could you explain what is categorised as street harassment and the impact that it has on people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just important to say as well that street harassment has been around since the beginning of time, really. And it was just until we went on our Erasmus that we actually knew the phrase. And I know it's been enriched in activism in Northern Ireland even since before we had even heard the term, but it wasn't until we went away that we actually knew what it was. But street harassment can be defined as unwanted interactions in public spaces. And that term that we would have studied in the Netherlands came from Holly Carroll, who did Stop Street Harassment. She's the original founder of that, based in America. And that really ranges from leering, stalking, catcalling, all the way up to more extreme forms of sexual assault. And that's what it would really be coined as and what we would know it as today.
Mm-hmm. God, it's interesting there. I'm just thinking of, back to myself, but I was in Bologna in Italy for Erasmus, and it's something, you know, we saw all the time, a group of Irish girls together over studying, and like you, I mean, we just thought it was normal. We never would have, you know, thought of doing anything about it, but it's great to see now that, you know, like that was assigned to you as an essay or a piece to work on, and that really got you thinking about what you can do practically, and look where you've come now, you know, trying to make real change around this issue. And I suppose it's at a really crucial time. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but you've categorised street harassment there. I mean, catcalling, all of that. Stalking is a really serious form of street harassment, of course. And just today, before you joined us, we were reading about the progression of the stalking bill here in Northern Ireland. So, I mean, is today an important day in terms of your campaign, or how does that interject with your work?
Definitely, because stalking would be seen as one of the more extreme forms of street harassment. We're delighted to see this legislation coming in, and I think any kind of step forward is brilliant to see, and any step forward is a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as well, just to add there, it's a triumph for anyone who's been affected with those kind of things, like in terms of women and minority groups who would be classified as people who are predominantly affected by street harassment. It is a triumph for them because it does fall under that bracket and it has been criminalised today. So I think especially for myself and Hannah, coming from that legal background as well, we are just delighted that
absolutely
today.
No, it's really good news. And I suppose it's been lobbied for what, maybe decades here. So we can see how these things take a really long time to come through. But I suppose it's a real relief that we can see things going in the right direction. And we know that the strategy on violence against women, you know, the consultation is out on that as well as we speak. But then you see the kind of reverse, where I think Priti Patel recently announced that misogyny will never be a hate crime. So on one hand, you know, we do see progression, but really, you know, are people taking this seriously? You know, and I suppose it's about working with groups and organisations like yourself to get that message across.
And thank God that the collapse of the executive didn't stop it from going through,
right.
Which is a good point. But obviously it was seen from your social media posts and stuff that you've been working with local councils and campaigns and raising awareness and working with local political representatives. So working with the councils and the political representatives, what do you hope to achieve as a organisation as a whole?
Our main thing really is consciousness raising and making these conversations unavoidable in Northern Irish society. So lobbying is a really big part of that. Really, politicians and local councils really have the power and the resources to make these changes in our society. So it is a big part of our campaign, really lobbying them and having these conversations about street harassment and really putting it on their agenda. But on the other side of that too, it's also really important to us now that COVID's lifting to work with the community. So kind of our two main things is the lobbying and the kind of education within the community approach. So both them things together, we really think is the best way to kind of achieve these things.
And I suppose without a legislative format, it's hard to you can't criminalise anybody's action. So raising awareness is one thing, but I suppose you're working with the right people to try and make sure that it becomes, you know, that affirmative action is taken to stop this. I don't know whether you heard this or anybody listens, but we had a really insightful episode. You might have seen that we recorded a really insightful episode with Dr. Louise Crowley. She is the senior family law lecturer and solicitor with University College Cork last year. So in that conversation, we focused really on education and the bystander intervention programme, which you might be aware of. But the conversation led around to, the culture and language, and really starting from that when it comes to education. And, you know, we know about the myths around rape culture and the awful violence against women, often resulting in murder, which is horrendous. But the type of issues that you're trying to highlight, you know, the catcalling and all of that, does that contribute? Well, it does. Evidence shows that it does, to the wider issue of sexual harassment and violence. And how important is it for your organisation and everybody collectively to tackle those issues, you know, as part of feeding into that wider debate around sexual violence and harassment?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you mentioned the bystander effect, which is just crucial to what we would champion for, in terms of that everyone needs to recognise what it is first. You'd see a lot of situations where people just don't understand that is actually harassment, and they just let it go, and those kind of behaviours just are normalised in our society. And if we do take a look at the sexual assault pyramid, street harassment would be at the bottom of that, and then as you go up, you'll see more extreme forms of sexual assault. And we would really just echo that you have to tackle the lower form in case it does then escalate to the top. And I think that's a really important point to consider as well when we are trying to debunk these myths, because it's just been completely ingrained in our society for decades.
Yeah.
What we're trying to completely erase history in the sense that we have all been taught that this is a normal behaviour in our society. So we really have to undo that and tell people, you know what, this is harassment, and it won't be allowed anymore in our society.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if you tackle those, I mean, catcalling, you've given other examples there. That's the one I keep referring back to. I mean, the damage that has, I suppose, on victims or people who are recipients of that type of behaviour wouldn't be widely known, I guess, and that's why it becomes normalised. That this is just something that you have to live with, essentially. How do we really eradicate or kind of debunk those myths, or the whole victim blaming? Well, it's what you're wearing, you're obviously attracting attention and all of that. I mean, it seems like we still have a long way to go. Where does that education start? Do you think it starts very young, or is there a sense that it should be further up, maybe secondary, third level education? How important is it to start that education piece, and also how important is it to be a bystander? I know you said it's a very important part of your work, but how do we equip people to be a bystander, to call this out, to stand up for people? Because people would very often be afraid to intervene and kind of ignore it or not want to. What ways have people been calling this out, or is there anything that you can recommend?
Definitely. There is no short-term quick fix really for this. It is going to be a really long-term kind of solution that we need to have in place. But education is definitely the way to do that. There needs to be definitely appropriate RSE education in schools, probably in the longer term, but in the shorter term, even maybe at that secondary level, having these kind of educational training sessions on street harassment and things like this, and bystander training, that is so important. And really just having these conversations and making them comfortable conversations to have, making them normal conversations to have.
I think we've both thought about it a lot in terms of how do we really reach people and how do we really understand the issue. And I think a lot is to do with changing mindset as well, and for both male and females. For males particularly, they need to understand that it is an issue and it is their issue, even though it's not them being directly affected. And then for the female, it's knowing that they don't have to feel guilty, that they are the ones being harassed, it's not their fault, and really changing their mindset to be confident to call it out and not accept it. So I think mindset really plays into it as well.
Yeah, and making men, I suppose, allies to this and bringing them into the conversation, because very often when people highlight these issues on social media, for example, I'm sure you've seen it, the hashtag is normally something like not all men, which we've seen time and time again. So really to bring people on board, is it important for you to focus on your messaging, that you're not, isolating various sectors of the community, and that you're encouraging, everybody to get involved in that debate? How important is messaging around that?
Yeah, definitely, because everybody does need to be involved in this conversation if we really do want to make a change. So it's crucial that everyone is involved and everyone feels comfortable being involved as well and included in the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I think when you see those things online and you see people posting about educating men and stuff, I think it is very easy for, as a man, to come out and the first reaction is to say not all men, because you feel like you have to defend yourself. But it is a conversation. It's not a blame game. It's a conversation that everyone needs to be involved in. And I think coming from an all boys secondary school, and I think I find it with all schools in Northern Ireland, those seen as awkward conversations just aren't spoken about. Yeah. And I think teachers or the syllabus are afraid to talk about sex or harassment because it's seen as awkward. But I think it's so important, especially for me. It was never spoken about in school, and I think it would be so important to speak about it there, because then boys are going on to university, and if it's just seen as a normal thing to speak about, it would be easier for someone to come and call out maybe a bad action of catcalling or harassment on a night out in university. So if it's seen as a normal thing to speak about, it's so much easier to be an ally or a bystander and to stop forms of harassment.
Which is probably
100%.
yeah, and it's great to see you've such a strong presence online. I'm sure that reaches out to younger people too.
Yeah, social media is a great way of reaching out to people, but there is that kind of, you're reaching quite a limited demographic.
True.
So kind of a lot of our focus now moving forward would be trying to reach community groups and working within communities as opposed to really reaching, I suppose, quite a narrow demographic in social media. But social media is such a powerful tool, and that's really how our campaign really got off the ground. So it's great.
Yeah, it is. But as you say, Jack, I think there is a disconnect too among males. I think what you said is absolutely spot on. It's so hard to really get across to males without making them feel like they are the target. There is a real defense mechanism that kicks in as soon as you're placed in the same category as those very few males who are violent against women and girls. And I think it's just trying to let them know that although it is not all men, like all men do have to be part of that conversation in order to find a solution. And hopefully we'll get closer to that stage and it won't be as awkward as what it is, because I do think a lot of males just try and stay away from it because they don't even want to be placed in the same conversation.
That's a really great way to phrase it. And I guess when you see do you remember in certain universities they introduced the mandatory consent classes, and there was a huge reaction to that, particularly from men and boys who did not want to take part in that because they felt that they were going to be targeted and victimised in there. But I suppose it's about looking at the statistics, which are the statistics, and the facts speak for themselves. But as you say, really making huge efforts to be hands-on and reach out to different communities and bring people into the conversation, which I'm sure is not easy. So you've got a big job on your hands, but at the same time, I mean, your messaging has gone, very far already, and it's good timing, I think, with everything moving forward and progressing around other areas where they're trying to combat and tackle violence against women and girls. So it's great. How do you both combine this? Because you're a student, Hannah, you're studying your master's, and Kristen, you're working. Where do you get time to focus on your work with Stop Street Harassment?
I know we always make a joke that we have such a dysfunctional kind of friendship because it's just a mixture of like we'll have all our personal stuff and then it just switches to the really serious talk of, okay, right, what we have to do this week, this is on the agenda and we have to get through this. But I suppose we just have a passion of trying to raise awareness on this issue in Northern Ireland. So, I mean, we don't mind devoting our time, and I mean, it's among the amazing other activists in Northern Ireland as well who devote all of their time, and I feel like we all just band together and try and make it work. But yeah, it is funny because we do have that kind of strange friendship of putting work together.
Definitely, and people are usually surprised as well that as in our full-time jobs, like we do this on top of our full-time commitments, and our other team members do it on top of their full-time commitments. That definitely we brought on new team members in October, and that has helped so much. Like I don't think we can't even describe how helpful it's been to have more people involved in the team and people with so many different skills that me and Kristen don't have. So that has definitely made things a lot better.
That is
since
fantastic.
then. I don't know how we coped before,
But that's great. We saw that actually. You were mentioning to me that you were looking for someone to join your team. That's fantastic. Well, you're both lawyers and you're both activists very clearly. So obviously the perfect candidates for our wee podcast. But just how important, I guess, is activism? You've kind of touched on how you are activists, but how important is it to you, and how can we use the law as a tool for activism? We ask all of our guests this. Hannah, how do you see it?
Well, the law is the us especially being lawyers, the law is such a powerful tool. It does really tell the society what's right and what's wrong. So it is such a powerful tool to have. Of course, there's downfalls in the law too, especially when we're looking at sometimes how people feel engaging with the criminal justice system, especially women in marginalised communities. So there's downfalls too. There's like a lot of work to do, but the law is huge and activism is a huge part of it too, and they fit really, really well together.
Absolutely. And Kristen?
Yeah, what I love about activism and law is that where there are gaps in the law, that's really where activism kicks off. You really see that there's nothing like grassroots activism these days. There really isn't. I mean, it really is part of the people in the sense that it's just people devoting their time to raising awareness and lobbying and campaigning for things that just sometimes the law can't really see. And I think there is just something so powerful about that, and it does change a lot, and especially now that we have the platforms such as social media. I mean, you can't go too far wrong in trying to get your message out there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think both hand in hand really are very, very important.
Hand in hand. So you've got your campaigns, you're raising awareness, you're reaching out, I suppose, making different networks and partnerships with really important people like the Minister for Naomi Long as well. I know you've met with her already. What lies ahead for Stop Street Harassment NI for the next 12 months in terms of events or plans, or what you hope to achieve?
We have a busy few months coming up at the minute. Coming up to International Women's Day, we have a rally planned in Derry with our amazing friends over at Alliance for Choice Derry. We're really, really looking forward to that. That's going to start in March, and that will be in Derry. If anyone listening is free, everyone's more than welcome to join.
Yeah, highlight that.
So that is like a big thing coming up at the minute. And then we actually have a short documentary coming out as well in the first week of April, which is Anti-Street Harassment Week. That runs from the 3rd to the 9th of April. So we have a short documentary coming out that we've been working on for months now, with lots of amazing volunteers who came forward to talk about their own experiences of street harassment, and then also loads of great organisations such as the Rainbow Project and Reclaim the Night. They're all on to chat about street harassment as well. So fantastic. We're busy working on that. That's probably our biggest thing at the minute.
Amazing. So exciting, and great organisations and people that you're working with as well. We're really excited to follow your work.
It's just one big community, isn't it?
Yeah,
everyone working together.
It is, and that's great that you've mentioned International Women's Day and then the Anti-Street Harassment Week. Perfect. We will certainly look forward to seeing what you're up to, and if there's anything we can do to share your work or focus on it, please let us know.
Thank you.
It's been great chatting to both of you today. And we look forward, hopefully have you back on to see how you're getting on, and we hope to see really great progress around your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving you listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.